we keep harkening back to the references and how he structured the speech. What do you think, Heather? How was the speech structured?
Fantastic. So the things that I was looking for specific for my evaluation was the opening, the ending, the structure of the speech or the sequence that you used, and then whether there was a call to action. Since this was your icebreaker speech, the call to action was not necessarily as important, but I made some pretty interesting notes because I think even though it was an icebreaker speech, you did an amazing job with the format that you used. So you introduced the theme, and it's rare to see an icebreaker that actually has a theme. You also engaged the audience. You asked specific questions about who knew where this came from. Then you moved into, I would say, the body of your speech by contrasting Raj versus Rajneesh, and that you joined TIAA with almost a different name and the impact that that had on you. Then you moved into specific situations that made you think about that choice that you had made and the impact that it had on your life and how other people perceive you, which is really interesting. My favorite part of your speech, and I actually wrote it down, is how you ended. So whenever we're looking for strong endings, especially with icebreakers, sometimes we taper a little bit or we get hurried. But you ended with the sentence of, you know my name is Rajneesh. And I wrote that down, that was really impactful. Like, I hope I get a chance to say that to someone. Because that really capped it. So for your structure, you came in with a theme, you related that theme to specific real world examples and how people perceive you based upon your name, and then you owned your name at the end of the speech. So for an icebreaker specifically, I feel like that was a really advanced structure. It feels like you put a lot of time and thought into it and almost moved it into poetry a little bit, which was really interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I actually was waiting for a Destiny's Child
Yeah.
So Mark, what did you think about the mechanics of how he did this speech?
Yeah, and I appreciate you pointing that out. It's really about the mechanics of what we said. And I have to say that as this kind of format for evaluating, I really enjoyed in that I could just get hyper-focused on just the mechanics. I didn't have to think about the content. I was literally just looking at it. And other people are speaking about the content itself. So there's a number of things here I'm going to review. One is clarity. You had a great job of being clear. I've never had an issue at all understanding anything that you were saying or any reference. So I thought you did a great job with that. Vocal variety. So this is using tone, speed, and volume as tools. I thought your tone was pretty consistent. And I think you could have, if it had an opportunity for improvement, to try to go a little higher or a little lower and try to introduce some vocal variety to help engage the listener more. That would be an opportunity for improvement. You had some speed changes, which I think help to emphasize certain parts of the story. So I thought that was good, especially when you talked about the gal who was trying to think through that situation. You gave it a little bit of an extra pause there. I think you probably could have paused a little bit more, because then everybody understands that awkward feeling that comes, and you could kind of stress that and emphasize that more. Eye contact, great eye contact. And I think this also relates down to your comfort level. In regards to, I felt that you were very comfortable speaking. I saw no issues in regards to that, and I don't think if you were nervous at all, I know you mentioned at the beginning that your heart may be racing. I don't think that what came through in your voice or your actions at all. So if you were still nervous, it didn't show. Gestures. I thought you did a good job with gestures. You had plenty of them. I would say that while you, and this is kind of using the room, so I put gestures and your movement in the room. I think you did a good job of moving while you were up presenting. Some people can pace, you didn't. So I thought that was really good, especially for an icebreaker speech. It was almost like you paced with your hands, though. everything you said had to have a word, or everything you said had to have a gesture that went along with it. It doesn't have to be that way. So just something, an opportunity to improve on there. I thought overall, really excellent mechanics for your first speech. I mean, just, it seems like you've been doing these for a while.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And Albert, how did you feel about Ashton's speech?
So my perspective is going to be on how I felt, so the emotional connection. So the reality is, almost contrary a little bit to what Lori was talking about a minute ago about focus on the speaker, I'm going to focus on just listening to your speech, how it made me feel. Okay? And I have to say, 30 seconds into the speech, the first thing that came to my mind was, I was an immigrant to this country. I came here from Spain, didn't speak English, and the first time I had to introduce myself, I didn't even, at home I was called Alberto. And so I knew that sounded weird. And I was hesitant to want to say, like, Alberto. And so I became Albert, obviously. So right away, that idea of, the anxiety of telling someone your name and do you fit in or not fit in. So that was one thing I felt. And I liked the point you said. You said I wanted to use my name because it was the name my parents gave me. And that had a real, that resonated with me. Like, everyone should feel comfortable and proud of using their name. It's the name you were given.
Right.
And I enjoyed very much the way you said the recollections of watching TV with your dad and your brother, and all of a sudden it became just more of a, like, I can picture a child sitting, or a young person sitting in the room with their family. So it had a mental imagery around that as well. Another emotion I felt was I was a little surprised because I wasn't sure where you were going. And at times it also caused me a little confusion because how's this all going to tie Star Wars, Star Trek? I was a little like, okay, I'm kind of following along. But to Heather's point, I love the way you ended when you said, you know my name. And I said, that just gave me a sense of we need to demonstrate, well, you were demonstrating confidence and, kind of building off what Mark was saying. I would not have thought of that speech as someone as an icebreaker who's giving their first speech, because it demonstrated to me, like, wow, there was a lot of just positive and very well orchestrated, dynamics in the way you delivered that speech. So, I walked away saying, I want to get to know this guy more.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. And I actually have one question kind of for anybody who wants to take it. Bradley's being new to Toastmasters. What is one thing that you think that he should take advantage of? Whether it's mentorship or, I don't know, doing more table topics, one aspect of Toastmasters that you think would really be an improvement or something to help him improve?
You could be an unofficial evaluator. So Lori mentioned in hers that you could give it a few speeches before you become an official evaluator. That doesn't mean you can't, while somebody is giving a speech, start thinking, these are things that I would like to emulate. These are things that I could try to work on myself. And then you can absorb the good and the great things that so many people do into your own speeches.
And since this is your icebreaker, And now we're going to move on to the second speech.